Hello, everybody, and welcome to UX Insiders, a live event hosted by the UX Design Institute and featuring contributions from the most interesting and most creative people in the UX field. In the UX Design Institute, we aim to deliver world-class education to the next generation of UX professionals. With our live events, we aim to bridge the gap between education and industry for budding designers by talking to some of the best people working in UX. And today is no exception. We are joined by the wonderful Margarida Botelho, who is a senior product designer with Revolut. With over 6 years of experience working with different products and companies from Europe and the US, she has spent the last 2 years with Revolut. She has helped to reshape some core functions of the retail app, like ordering, managing, and customizing physical cards with your own designs. She is currently sitting on the transfers team, and she is responsible for everything related to sending and receiving money to and from your Revolut account. She has enjoyed being part of the design team and continues to enjoy being with a company that continues to grow and excel. So we are so excited to have you here today, Margarita, and the response to this event has been so positive. So everybody watching at home, there will be time for a Q&A later. So I'll ask if you're tuning in to please type any questions you have for Margarita in the questions panel, which is just at the bottom of the box, and we will run through them throughout the event depending on the relevancy. So if you see a question that you would particularly like to hear the answer to, please upvote it, and please don't be shy, ask questions. There's no such thing as a silly question in these situations. So Margarita, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and thank you for the very nice introduction as well.
Okay, so Margarita she's tuning in from the Revolut offices in Berlin, and we would all love to hear a little bit about you and your background before you actually joined the Revolut app. So could you tell us a bit more where you came from, what you studied, and a little bit about your working experience?
Yes, definitely. So I'm originally from the Azores Islands in Portugal, and I moved to Lisbon when I was 18 to study communication design. The degree was very nice, but it was very focused on more traditional graphic design. So even including brand design, it was very focused on typography and more traditional design objects like books or even CD covers, magazines, editorial design. So I learned a lot about that, and that's really what my degree was about. Right when I finished my degree, I was very lucky because the University of Lisbon opened a bunch of new postgraduate programs. One of them was called Digital Experience Design, and that's the one that I decided to pursue. And that was great because all of my teachers were actually working full-time as UX designers, UI designers, front-end developers. Some of them were entrepreneurs and marketeers as well. So that contact with the industry was very important for me at that stage in my life. And it was it was really an awesome experience. After that, my first job was at a Lisbon startup called Landing Jobs. And I was just starting out. And also the company was very young. But in this first job, it was funny because I had to wear so many different hats because we had so much to do and not enough people to do everything. So everyone in the team needed to be super flexible and super agile as well. So this needs to get done. Okay, I think I can do it. Let's go. So it was very exciting. And I did a bit of everything, and including even front-end development, which was also very interesting. After that, I decided that I was doing too much, that I wanted to focus a little bit more and become an expert instead of just having this very general role. And so I joined a small studio in Lisbon as well called Major. And there I learned a whole different set of things. So we were only 6 designers. So I got to witness very closely how my boss would manage her clients and how she would find clients, how important it is to maintain relationships with our clients, and all of that more business side of design. So that was a really great experience as well. And after 1 year, as much as I loved to work there, I decided that I thought to myself, okay, so maybe I can just cut the middleman and just get my own clients and start doing it by myself. So I decided to freelance and to do product design as a freelancer. And I did that for 2 years. And that was also very, again, a very, very different experience. So I had to learn how to do my taxes and like how to get clients, how to network. And so I did that. And while I was freelancing, randomly, a recruiter from Revolut reached out to me on LinkedIn. And they said, hey, we think you could maybe be a good fit. What do you think? Would you like to apply for a job with us? And at that point, I had been using Revolut for a really long time, and I was a fan of the product. And I thought to myself, there is no way that I'm ever going to get in, but decided to apply anyway, because why not? I had nothing to lose. And I got in, and now we're here 2 years later. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And now we're here. That's great. I love how much you focused on how much you learned during every step of your journey to becoming a product designer at Revolut. So I might just go back a little bit, and we can focus on kind of maybe your interest in design before you became a designer. So were you always interested in design, or was it something that developed kind of later on?
I guess yes, even though for a very large chunk of my childhood and teenage years, I had no idea what design actually meant, just because it wasn't something that was present in my universe. I didn't know any designers or anything like that. So, but yes, I guess my first design crush, you could say, was fashion design. And I remember very vividly my mom pulling out, I had this coat, this red raincoat, plastic, when I was a kid. And I remember just the excitement that I would feel whenever I would put that jacket on. And to me, that idea that through design, we can change our reality and change our perception and change the way we feel, really. To me, that's fascinating. So that's why I really like fashion design. Fashion can make you feel powerful, it can make you feel confident, but it can also do the opposite. It can make you feel vulnerable, it can make you feel exposed, it can make you feel like you belong to something, like, for example, when you are wearing a jersey for your favorite sports team. So yeah, I really like that idea, because in reality, what was happening is that the weather was gray and it was raining and it was a bad situation, but that jacket like made it fun and exciting to go out. And that's really powerful. I guess the second design crush was probably interior design for a very similar reason. I find it really interesting that we can design spaces, and these spaces will affect, again, how we perceive reality, how we perceive time, and the way we feel. So, for example, you would feel, if you are in a big contemporary museum with big white walls and like a concrete floor, and there's a lot of natural light, it's a very different mood than if you're placed in let's say, an IKEA store, for example, where there's a lot of visual information, a lot of noise. And just by changing the space, you change how you feel. And with product design, I think we have the power to create the same effect, really. What we are doing, essentially, you can think of it as creating digital spaces where people experience things. And yes, I guess that's what I find fascinating about design.
I love that when you're looking at fashion and interior, that you focused on how it actually makes you feel rather than how it makes you look, because that's the big powerful thing in those types of design that you've described, and obviously in UX. Then when you went on to do your graduate in digital experience, was it? What was it that appealed to you about doing that course?
So I stumbled into UX and UI sort of by chance. I didn't really have a plan. I was just figuring it out as I progressed through the different stages of my life. And my first contact with UX, I guess, was at a very young age. in a Portuguese website called Cidade da Malta. It doesn't exist anymore, and it was like a Flash website. And one of the things that they had there, it was a website for kids, and it had a lot of educational content. And one of the courses was HTML. And I remember how fun it was to just write some text and then it turns into a visual thing. I thought that was fascinating. And I created this pink web page with like a glitter butterfly, and that was just so much fun. And then later, I also remember playing around with Tumblr themes and just customizing it to look exactly as I wanted and spending so many hours on that. But I never imagined that it was actually a job that you could have, that people actually pay you to do. I found that out much later while I was in college already. And so to me, because I had that experience of doing that for fun, I thought, I've enjoyed this so much in the past, like maybe this makes sense for me. But also, I started college in 2012, and in that year, Portugal, where I'm from, was going through a very, very severe economic crisis. And I didn't have a lot of hope about my job future. I didn't really think that I would have a stable job that would provide me with the stability that I wanted for my life. So it was also a very important thing to know that this field had a lot of job offerings, and that I could potentially thrive here, and that I would have a future.
Hey, that's really exciting. And I also love that you've really focused in on the playful element of UX, and that's something that you seem to really enjoy, which hopefully we'll touch on a little bit later. So I'd love to move us to the present day and what your day-to-day responsibilities in Revolut are. So could you walk us through an average day as a product designer with Revolut?
Yes, definitely. So throughout the 2 years that I've been at Revolut, I've worked in many different teams with many different features. I started with the open banking team, and then I moved to the cards team. In the cards team, I was responsible for everything from the moment where you order your card until you receive it, activate it, use it in the shops, and then manage it as well. So all the settings for your cards, like freezing or canceling the card. And now I am at the transfers team. So now we're responsible for everything related to sending money, whether that is sending money to another Revolut customer or sending money to a bank account, you name it. So my day usually starts with a sync with my product owner. We usually take 30 minutes every day. We don't use it every day. We just use it when we need it. But we always have that time booked, so we can get together and discuss what I did yesterday and align priorities for what I'm going to do today. So that's usually how my day starts every day. Other responsibilities include doing interviews for new hires, whether that is interviewing designers or reviewing portfolios, everything related to the hiring process. There's a lot of presentations as well with stakeholders, and a lot of communication with the engineering team. So those would be like the main things that I do on a day or a week, let's say.
We have a question here from Mattia, who wants to know, how do you organize your daily work or your sprints? So are there particular tools that you rely on, or what's your method for keeping track of everything?
Yes, so our lead designer, the lead designer for my group particularly, has done a very, very good job at having a Jira board for the design team. And that's usually what we use. So we have a design backlog, and then we prioritize together with the product owner what are the things that we want to tackle for the next month, let's say. And then we use that board to give visibility to the entire team of what each one of us is doing and working on. So that's usually how we go about that.
Okay, so that's your main source of keeping track of everything that you're doing. Okay, that's
yes,
great.
And we also have dailies with other product designers where we basically discuss these tasks and move them around on the board and just make sure to keep it very organized and up to date.
And what other roles would you collaborate with on a regular basis? Not necessarily day to day, but maybe on a weekly or monthly basis. Who else would you be working with?
At Revolut, there are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of people that we need to communicate with. The people that I collaborate with the most would definitely be the product owner. We have a very close relationship, and we constantly communicate, and I think it's very important. The second and third, in no specific order, would be obviously the engineering team. Also very, very important that we have a close relationship and that we are constantly communicating and clarifying any doubts that might happen. All doubts from my side, but also doubts from their side in relation to the designs that I create. And also the lead designer in my team. And the lead designer makes sure that all the designers in the different teams are focusing on the right tasks and that no one is doing duplicate work. So that's also a very important touch point. But this is the closest people to me. But wider, there is obviously marketing team, legal teams, compliance teams, copywriters, you name it. There's a whole bunch of roles that we constantly work with to make sure that whatever products we are working on are the best possible.
We've a question here again about product owners and development teams from Rebecca. So they want to know kind of more about the relationship. I suppose maybe how much you are actually working with a product owner and how much you are collaborating with a development team. So could you give us just maybe an example of just how closely you would be working alongside these people?
Yes, so again, with the product owner, we have daily syncs and we connect every day and we are constantly aligned and that's super important. With engineers, we have several ways in which we communicate. So we have, in my team, we have a Slack channel dedicated solely for, we even call it Design Dev Sync. And we use this Slack channel to have conversations so that the engineers can clarify any questions that they might have while they are working. And that I can reach out to them as well and be like, hey guys, I'm thinking of doing this. We have this crazy idea. Is it doable? Is it feasible? And so with them, I found that asynchronous communication works best. However, we also have a weekly meeting where they actually show me and the product owner work in progress that they might be working on, and we give them feedback on that session as well. So a lot of different ways to communicate. I think what's important is to have that trust relationship where people trust you and come to you when they have doubts, and that you have many different ways that they can do that so that it's very easy to communicate.
Yeah, we have a question here from Kieran who wants to know how big is the design team, which I suppose is a question with many layers to it because there's design teams all over the world with Revolut.
Yes, so I'm not too sure actually. I think we are maybe 40, 50 product designers. Then we also have graphic designers, we have industrial designers, 3D artists. There's a whole variety of roles for design at Revolut.
Okay, so hard to keep track of everybody.
Yes, hard to keep track.
And I suppose that feeds into having to be just kind of being in contact with people and having open lines of communication so that nothing gets lost in translation.
Yes, definitely.
So I'd love to know a little bit about your design process and how that actually leads to designing successful products like Revolut cards. And events.
Yes, so about the design process, the first thing is we try to have as many inputs as possible and as many, again, ways to communicate with our users. We do this in a variety of ways. One of them is through our amazing UX research team, which helps us with user interviews, usability tests, etc. But we also have other ways that we get this feedback from our customers. That will include NPS surveys, which are Net Promoter Scores, for example, or even our data analysts as well also help us analyze the macro trends that might be happening in the app. So once we have all of this raw data, the next step will be to, again, sit down with the product owner, sit down with the product team, and prioritize and take all of these issues and decide, okay, so what do we want to solve now? What do we want to solve in a year? And what is not an issue for now? After that, we try to nail the problem statement and write it down and come up with a hypothesis on what's happening. This is a very, very key step, in my opinion, one of the most important. After that, we come up with a possible solution, discuss with stakeholders, and then we make a decision. Okay, are we happy with what we have, or do we need another round of iteration? If we need another round, this means that the project will go all the way back to the user so that they can give us feedback and then go through the loop again. So that's usually how the design process will work.
Okay, great. And we have a question that's related to that here from Carolina, who wants to know, how is the testing and research culture at Revolut?
Yes, so we have a UX research team that helps us with all of this. And they are doing a great job at understanding how we can fit research perfectly into the design process. It's a work in progress and it's not perfect yet, but we do have amazing leaders that are working on this and making sure that we nail these processes, because also this is a company that grew very quickly, and we experiment a lot with our processes, and we are constantly trying to find the best way to work together. And this is in itself also an iterative process and something that we are constantly perfecting and trying to nail. So yes, it's a work in progress.
And I know you mentioned that there are specific researchers, but Federico would like to know, and if this is in the hands of the researchers, that's perfectly fine, about setting up interviews with users. So what tools would you normally use to do kind of user interviews?
Yeah, so our UX research team has some specific tools that they use, but I've also done it in the past myself. And I would just send them an email and be like, hey, do you want to chat for 30 minutes? And then people would get back and we would just jump on a call and have a conversation. So, so yes, there's a lot of different ways in which we do this, but it's mostly with our UX research team.
And just to jump back into the different teams that you worked on, what were maybe the biggest design differences in working when you were working with the card design versus the transfers team? Because is there an element of maybe more physical design going in with cards compared to just doing the transfers alone?
With cards, all the screens are very visual and very graphic. So that was a lot of fun because I got to really explore interaction design and take it really far, or at least as far as I could at the time, and really make the interface really beautiful and engaging and exciting and delightful. With transfers, it's a bit more serious, right? Because you are sending money to a bank account. So it's not as playful, but it's also very interesting. It has its own challenges for sure.
Yeah, so what would be a huge element with Revolut where you need to make sure that your customers feel safe using your product? So what would be the design decisions made around security to let people know that, yes, this is okay to use?
There's a lot that goes into security, and this is a huge topic. What we try to do is try to bring the experts into the design process. So trying to include the InfoSec team, the information security team, trying to bring the compliance, legal, etc. Try to bring all of those teams into the design process, make sure that they have space to be heard and that they have space to voice their concerns, and then let that inform the design process. I think it's very important that we rely on the experts of the different areas, because again, we are handling people's money, and that's a very serious thing to handle, right? And at the same time, where there's money, and this is true for any bank and not just Revolut, there are people trying to get it, right? So it's a constant effort, and there are people that are dedicated to this full time. What we need to make sure on the design side is that we have very robust processes in place, and that we have that moment that they can come in and help us design a product that is super safe.
And I suppose the most amazing thing about Revolut is just how efficient it is. When we think of all of the things, like if we owe our friends money and we used to have to go to the ATM and take out that exact amount, or when we're going out for dinner and we have to try split a bill between 12 people and try and figure out that. So efficiency really is one of the biggest appeals of Revolut. So again, how do you design it so that the users actually know how efficient it is and how much it can improve their day-to-day spending?
So yeah, like you said, 20 years ago, I don't even remember how people would transfer money to each other, right? I imagined they, like you said, they would go to the ATM, take out cash, give it to the other person. The other person had to go to the bank, cash it in, or write a check even, which is crazy nowadays. And yeah, I think digital banks, Revolut included, of course, have made a terrific job at putting design at the center of things, and making sure that we make all of these experiences way simpler than they were before. The next step for me, and this has become kind of like expected, right? I think people now are so used to this efficiency that they sort of expect it from any bank. And so for me now, the goal and my vision and my dream really is to take it one step further and make it actually, take it from efficient and quick to delightful and joyful. So that's what I would like to do now.
Yeah, well, that's definitely your approach to work, so I can see that. I can see
yes.
that much is true. There's someone I know who doesn't have Revolut, and whenever you owe them money, we have to take their IBAN.
Oh my God, no.
It's such a source of comedy for all of us now. It's like, come on, Granddad. We don't want your IBAN, we just need your mobile number, and that'll make everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
So we have a question here from Daniel, who wants to know about how do you balance between long research and design projects and the need for fast, agile design updates?
So the way we do it is we try to solve very small problems and to do that quickly. That's the way we found to deliver value quickly to our customers, but still have that feedback loop be very effective. So I would say take huge problems, try to break them down into very logical, sort of independent parts, and try to tackle each issue at a time. That's the way we found, or at least that I found, to deliver value and still be quick.
Okay. Could you, because you've been there for 2 years, so we actively see a lot of changes in Revolut. So could you maybe walk us through any design decisions or changes that you've been involved in since starting with them 2 years ago?
Yes, there's many, but I would maybe choose two. The first one would be, and both of them is work that I did while I was working with the cards team. The first one would be, so we noticed at some point that we were getting a lot of customer support tickets with questions about our cards. So is this card plastic? Is this card metal? And this was especially true with limited edition cards, like special edition cards that we would launch. People would have a lot of questions about these cards. And so one of the things that we did that was very simple was to just add a 2-line description to each card, which now looking back seems so obvious. But just by doing that, we created the space to just talk about the card a little more and to give that information that people were looking for. The business benefited because we no longer had the extra load on the customer support team. And the user benefited because they didn't have to exit the flow, go to customer support, ask their question, wait for a reply, come back. So yeah, that would be the first one, which is very simple. And the second one, which is a way bigger project, would be card personalization. So here the idea is that you can take your Revolut card and you can draw, you can write, you can add stickers to it. And I guess like fashion design, I guess, we can go back to the beginning of the conversation. The goal here is to really make you see your card as an expression of yourself, and that you can really feel like it's your own because you drew something that is important to you on it. And so that was the goal.
And that's definitely where your playful element comes in as well.
Yes, I guess.
Yeah. Off to you. So would you be able to show us some examples of your day-to-day work?
Yes. Let me just share my screen really quickly. Let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes, it's coming up now.
Is it good?
But yeah, we're in now. Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to show you right now I literally took my phone, opened the app, and just recorded a video. So this is what you're going to see is the card personalization flow that I was just talking about and how it works currently in the app. So, okay, maybe let me just start it over. It's super quick. So here the idea is that you see the different cards that we have. You choose the one you want. And after that, you have three options. You can either draw, you can write, or you can add a sticker to your card, and you can then preview it. So here I just drew something really quickly. Please forgive my artistic skills. They're not very polished. And yeah, so then you can preview your card and then you can continue the card order. So this is how it looks like currently in the app. And you can go, if you go to your cards tab and you tap get card, you will be able to see this and play with it by yourself. And so this is how it looked like on Figma before we actually implemented it. So I would just like to talk a little bit about how I organize usually the flows and how this whole thing looks like. So first thing, very important, is we try to always have this, and here I just used dummy text. This is not a real example of text. This is just to illustrate what we usually do. So for each project, we try again to nail the problem statement and to know exactly what we are solving, right? So we usually have this very nifty template that one of our lead designers created, and here we describe the problem. So in one sentence, what is this feature about? What is the key problem that we are facing? How might we solve it? Describe the potential solution, and then describe what is the expected outcome. So this is a very important part. After that, we have the flow itself. So one thing that I would like to stress is that it's super, super important to keep your Figma files organized. It's okay to explore, it's okay to have a bunch of variations, but when you actually send out your deliverables to your colleagues, whether that is developers, product owner, copywriters, you name it, it's important that your file is organized and that it's clean. You will be saving a lot of time from your coworkers, and they will be very grateful, I hope. So yeah, so the way that I usually do it is from left to right, we have the flow, and it has, of course, an entry point. And here, let me just zoom in really quickly. So here's the entry all the way from the home screen until you get to the final screen before the actual flow. Then we have the section where you create your design in this case, and then you have the rest of the card order flow. So again, from left to right, where you begin and where you end. And the other dimension is vertically. I try to describe the variations for each step. So here, for example, you can see that vertically we have like 3 options. And here I describe the different tools. So I describe the drawing tool in this first line. Then on the line below, I describe the badges and how you add badges, how you move them around, how you scale and reduce them. My trackpad stopped working. Okay. And then finally the text and how you can change fonts, how you can move the text around, etc. After that, we have a preview screen where you can visualize your card and how it will look like, and then you can continue your journey. One important thing to say, and I'll stop sharing my screen, is that we have a very, very good design system, and we have amazing people working on our design system. And what this allows us to do is to create high fidelity mockups really, really quickly. So usually I don't need to really go into paper and create the interface with paper and pen. But for this specific flow, for card personalization, because everything was so custom, it was actually an exception to that. So I actually used pen and paper to draw it out on paper first and then go to Figma and complete the flow.
Great. I'm so glad you brought up design systems, because we have a number of questions here about design systems. One is from Kieran again, who wants to know, how does your team organize and update design systems? And is it each designer's responsibility, or is it just one designer who is managing all of it?
So we have a team, which is the design system team, and they are responsible for the design system. However, product designers that work in the different product teams are free to suggest any changes that they might need to the design system, depending on the product needs. So, for example, card personalization is a very good example, because most of these components were custom and done and made on purpose for this flow. So I actually had to introduce a lot of new components to the design system. But usually the idea is that you don't really need to, that you can create these high fidelity mockups super quickly, because most of the use cases are already covered.
Okay, great. So you've proven there how important it is to document everything. But when it comes to sharing this over with developers, do you create a detailed brief with annotations for them? And then how do they feed their feedback back to you?
It really depends on the project. Some projects, for example, this, it had a lot of custom interactions, a lot of custom animations. So I did create some really detailed Confluence pages describing all of these interactions in detail. For most things, because we have such an amazing design system, these things are already covered on the design system, so I don't have to worry too much about it. So it really depends from project to project how much documentation we need. The goal, of course, is to have everything covered by the design system and to just use the global patterns that we have.
Okay, great. And then just to bring it back to a bit of your day-to-day work, so you're very obviously a positive problem-solving kind of person, but which challenges would you do you face on a day-to-day basis? Which elements of UX design do you find difficult?
So there are a lot of moving pieces at Revolut especially, but also in other companies. At Revolut especially, it's a global product, right? We are present in a lot of countries, and also there are a lot of stakeholders, there are a lot of teams working on the product. Again, legal, compliance, copywriting, marketing. So there's a lot of moving pieces. It can be quite overwhelming at times to take out all this information and everything that's happening and decide, okay, so what is something that I need to solve now? What is something that I need to solve by next week? And what is something that maybe I can leave for now and not come to it? So I think the biggest challenge for me is to be really, really good at using my time in the best way that I can. And to not be overwhelmed by the amount of things to do. So of course, there's always a lot of things to do, a lot of ideas, a lot of projects that we want to do. But we always need to remember like what is going to be the most valuable thing for our customers and for the business as well, obviously.
Brilliant. And I suppose that leads nicely to this question about success metrics. So how do you actually measure success metrics on your design team?
Yes, so we have KPIs, so key performance indicators, and these basically you can think of them as goals, right? So if you have a restaurant, for example, you could have a KPI that says, okay, we want to serve 100 customers consistently every day for at least a month. So this would be an example of a KPI for a restaurant, let's say. So we have these KPIs at the company level, at the team level, and sometimes at an individual level as well. That's also possible. So basically what this does is this guarantees that whatever project you decide to work on is aligned with the company goals. And that's very, very important because we are literally thousands of people and we need to all be working towards the same things. We need all to be walking towards the same direction, so to say. So yeah, that's usually how we measure. We try to be very very precise about metrics and what we want to improve and what we want to optimize for.
Okay, brilliant. We have a question here from Frank about accessibility with Revolut. And I suppose accessibility with a lot of digital products is an ongoing process because it's something that always needs to be improved upon. But in your time at Revolut, have you had any challenges with accessibility standards, and have you overcome any issues around accessibility in your time there?
Yes, so I work with the app, and so of course this would be more a question for our development team because they are the ones that actually make sure that our solutions are accessible, right? And that we are up to the standards that we need to be. So yes, accessibility is incredibly important, not just for, I remember a while ago I spilled a bunch of coffee on my computer. This was like 10 years ago, and my enter key stopped working. And so I was using Slack, and I couldn't send messages to anyone because they didn't have an actual send button at the time. So the only way to submit the message was to press enter on your keyboard, and my enter was not working, so I couldn't use Slack, and that was very frustrating. And so that's just one example that shows that having accessible products is important for everyone, and not just for people who actually have issues. You might have temporary conditions that will also affect the way you use these digital products. But yes, I would leave that again to the experts in our technical team that actually make sure that everything is accessible.
That's actually a really interesting way to look at accessibility from a design point of view. If you take away one feature, how does somebody use it? So that's kind of an interesting way not to be fully dependent on one way of operating something.
Yes, definitely.
So we have a great question here from Abby, which has a lot of upvotes. So Abby is transitioning from graphic to product design. Do you think it's viable to land a junior product design role, or is it more common to work as a junior UX designer first?
I would say it's definitely possible, right? My first job was at a startup and at a company that was very small and didn't have a lot of, let's say, resources at the time. And so for me as a junior, that was a great place to start because I could just do so many different things. And I think it's definitely possible to start as a product designer junior. Yes.
And Gabby has a follow-on question here about a portfolio. So how would a product design portfolio differ to a UX portfolio for a UX designer?
Yes, I've never created a UX portfolio, and because I've always worked as a product designer, so I always did UX and UI together. So I never really had a job that was just focused on UX. So I don't. I'm not the best person to ask this for sure. But what I would say about portfolios is that what I look for when I look and examine portfolios is just a very straightforward communication, a clean layout, and the best projects that you worked on. So for me, less projects, very clear use case written down. I want to know exactly which problem you solved and how your solution impacted the business, but also exactly what your role and responsibility was. So I would say with portfolios, the most important thing for me is to, again, reduce, less is more, and to make sure that everything is super clear and well explained.
Brilliant, solid advice. We have another great question here from Hala, who wants to know, I love design and I'm currently a UX UI design student, but I came from a background where design was not really prominent or encouraged. So how did you overcome that hurdle, and do you have any advice for anyone aspiring to be a product designer?
Oh my God, that's a difficult question. My goodness. I would say it doesn't really matter what your background is. What matters at the end of the day is your work and what you've been able to do, and your attitude as well, and your outlook on life. I would say that someone that is curious, someone that is interested, and someone that is ready to take responsibility, those would be way more important things for you to have, I would say, when you're looking for a job as a product designer. So that would be my advice.
Could you actually talk us through what it was like as a freelance product designer? Because that might be a career path that a lot of people haven't considered yet.
Yes, so freelancing comes with a lot of challenges, but it's also very freeing, right? When I was freelancing, my workload was very low. To be completely honest, I worked maybe like 4 or 5 hours a day, which was great because I had time to focus on the things that I wanted to focus on in that period of my life. I guess the most challenging thing that the most challenging issue that freelancers face is how to find clients. And here, for me, it was very important to rely on my network and the people that I knew, the people I went to university with, the people I met in conferences, the people that and my teachers as well, and former colleagues. All of my clients came from relationships that I had. So it's very important if you are a freelancer, or if you want to be a freelancer, to be someone that people enjoy working with, and to really build those strong relations with your colleagues, with your coworkers, because in the future that people will come back to you, hopefully, because they enjoy working with you and hire you as a freelancer. So don't underestimate the power of your network and your friends and colleagues.
And it's also incredible that your freelancing role led to a full-time role with Revolut, and that's quite a common thing for a lot of freelance product designers, to have done contract work for big companies, and for the people that they're working for to realize, oh, they're actually quite valuable and we should add them to our team. So we have a question here from Emily, who would like to know a little bit more about your working relationship with UX researchers. Mm-hmm. So I guess this kind of falls back into, how do we work with the people who we are dealing with on an everyday basis? So how do you use their analytics and insights when creating your product design solution?
Yes, so usually we have a hypothesis, right? It can be many different things, and then usually what I would do is reach out to our UX research team and be like, hey guys, we have this hypothesis, we have this issue, can you help us first understand if this is a real problem? So that would be one way that they help. Then they also come in after we actually designed a solution for something. We could also go to them and be like, hey guys, we have this solution. We're not really sure if it solves the problem that we set out to solve. Can you help us understand this? And usually they would be the ones suggesting yes, we can. Ideally, they would answer, yes, we can help you. And this is how we think we can help you. And they will, so UX researchers have like a variety of tools at their disposal, right, to grab and to solve problems. So they will go to that toolbox, pick out two, I don't know, how would you say, tools, I guess, and be like, okay, so we think we can do interviews and usability tests to answer this question that you have. Let's do it. And then they usually take it, come back, and then we discuss whatever they found.
Okay. And we have a question here from Sound Nguyen, who wants to know, have you ever designed a function or a feature that hasn't been backed by research?
Yes, definitely. Especially when you work at smaller companies, or even when I was freelancing, sometimes clients don't want to spend the time to do research. Startups don't have the flexibility to spend the time on that. It's not ideal, definitely, but it's something that happens in the real world, and we also need to be flexible about that. And sometimes you just have to make your most informed guess that you can and just go with it and see how it goes. But yes, definitely not ideal, and I would not recommend.
Well, how do you actually deal with that? Would you attempt to do your own kind of mini research to try and make the best solution happen?
Yes, that's the way that I found to solve that issue, is to just go out and do it, and then come back to them and be like, hey, I did it. This is what I found. Let's use this to inform our decisions. And hopefully they get interested in research and they ask for it for the next project that you work on and for the next issue that you're solving.
That must be such a nice difference to go from when you were freelancing, where you have to convince people that they need to have these things, whereas in Revolut, it's nothing is done without research going into it.
Yes, I would say so. There are definitely things that do not need research. Like, for example, if you need to make changes because you need to be compliant with the legislation in a country, for example, you would just do it. Or if it's a simple change and you just want to fix it, you can also do it. But yes, ideally, we have a very solid evidence and support for the decisions that we make.
Okay. And I feel like I know the answer to this question before I even answer it. Kehal wants to know, is it worth adding projects that were not backed by research to your portfolio?
Really depends. Like, I've seen such a wide range of projects. For example, when I was in college, I created a digital label with my friends, and of course, this project was not backed by research. At the time, we didn't even know what it was, and it was just like a very experimental web page that had like graphics that reacted to sound. So it was just pure fun. So in that thing didn't have any research to it, but still it was a fun project that was very experimental. So I believe I included that in my first portfolio. But in general, always try to add it. If you don't have if it's very difficult for you, at least have a research plan described in the project. At least describe what you would do in these hypothetical projects. I'm assuming that this is speaking about like university work and like university projects. So at least have that research plan written down and what you would do to answer all your questions.
Okay, that's brilliant. So if you can't access people to do the research with, have a plan anyway, because that'll make your portfolio stand out a little bit more.
Yes, but do reach out to your mom, to your cousins, to your aunts, to your friends. At the very least, that's something that you can do very easily, hopefully.
There's always
There's always someone, yes.
So we have a question from Ricardo who wants to know about customer service and how big is the involvement when you must design or redesign a certain feature on the Revolut app?
Yes, so again, we have a very robust process in place whenever we want to design a new feature or a new product, or we want to make changes. And customer support, the customer support team is involved in this process as well. And they are usually responsible for making sure that all the customer agents know the answers to the questions that people might have when they come to the chat, but also updating pages like the frequently asked questions pages, all of that additional materials that we have on our website and on the app itself. So they are also involved in the design process, and they have a moment where they can give us that input and come up with a list of things that need to be done from their side for that change to be launched into production.
Okay. And we have a couple more questions here about breaking into UX. So Clarence would like to know, did your university credentials impact your breaking into UX?
I don't think so, to be completely honest. I think what impacted my career the most was the people that I met while I was studying, the teachers that I had, because my first 2 jobs actually, it was my teachers that recommended me. And it was them that offered me that opportunity. So I would say, yes, it's important to have solid education, but it's not really the diploma that will make a change. What will make a change is your actual work and the people you know, I would say, in my experience at least.
Okay. And I suppose that feeds back into work and being brilliant to work with and being a clear communicator, which is something that you've displayed throughout. And just to give you just a couple of compliments that have come in here from Hala, who says, thank you so much for your advice and for your uplifting outlook, Margarita. And then Jamie Sanchez has also said, I echo Hala's comments. This is so great. Thank you, Margarita, for sharing such knowledge and insights. It's fantastic. So everybody is really appreciating the feedback. And because we only have 4 minutes left in our webinar, if anybody has any pressing questions, please add them in here now. But I think one of the most important things that I would like to ask you is, like, what advice do you have for anybody who is freshly starting out in product design?
This is a difficult one. I guess I'll just try to go back to when I started working and the issues that I faced that I was not ready for, and try to talk about that. So the first one was to separate my self-worth from my work. In the beginning, I think being a product designer forces you to be humble, because you're constantly being proven wrong, constantly. You can have all the experience in the world, you can work with the best companies. At the end of the day, if you put your solution in front of people and they don't know how to use it, they don't get it, they don't find it useful, that's it. So it's part of the process to be wrong, because every time you're wrong, it's just one step closer to you being a bit more right. And so that's part of it. Embrace it, accept that as a reality, and be comfortable with it. The second thing would be to be prepared to talk a lot about your design decisions. My expectation when I was studying is that I would spend 100% of my time designing things. That's just not the reality of it. You spend a lot of time presenting your designs, communicating with engineers, communicating with the product owner, communicating with the design team, research, etc. So it's very, very important that you are also okay with that and ready for that to happen. It's also a very delightful thing, because you get to collaborate with so many different people from so many different areas. And yeah, I guess those are the 2 things that I would advise.
Well, Kieran Brady has said that is the best advice that he's heard in a long time.
Oh, it's good to hear. Thank you.
Yes, Sandrina is a big fan of being a designer forces you to be humble. So thank you so much, Margarita. You have given us so much to think about, and you've given us so much great practical advice about being a product designer and how to get involved in any form of design outside of product design as well. You've been so optimistic and you've been so playful, and I really can't wait to see what designs you contribute to Revolut in the future. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. Again, thank you so much for your questions. Our webinars wouldn't be anything at all if it wasn't for all of you paying attention and feeding us some great content. Our next webinar will be taking place on October 12th, and it is with Dr. Stephen Hassard, who is a UX researcher with Google, and we will have more information about that on our social media in the coming days. So Margarita, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. When I actually end this call, we'll both vanish from each other's screens, so just to give you a warning. But thank you so much. And if anybody wants to hear more from Margarita, she's wonderful on LinkedIn and she's worth a follow. So thank you, everyone, and good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.